The NFL trade deadline, uneventful once again here in 2021, but there is plenty to discuss for today with the Waiver Wire Q&A because we have got some decisions to make, talking Titans running backs, talking some quarterbacks, and more, getting you set for those season-long waivers. This is the Waiver Wire Q&A right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. My name is Jim Sannes. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, joined here as always by JJ Zachariason. He is the editor-in-chief of Numberfire and FanDuel. JJ, happy Tuesday to you. How are things going for you today?
Good. Just trying to figure out this Tennessee Titans backfield because we were dropped. You know, it's just interesting because, you know, usually when we get these injury news like we got with Derrick Henry, I feel like this one, you know, not only was it to arguably the most valuable player in fantasy this year, but it also happened after we thought that he was fine. You know, like he left in that game and we're all panicking and, you know, we used him in DFS or, you know, you have him in your season long league and everyone's scared. And, you know, he's out for a series or so. And then he comes back and he plays. He's even getting touches in overtime. We think everything's fine. And then Monday morning drops and Adam Schefter tweets out that he's likely done for the year. So really, really big week on the waiver wire, mostly because, you know, at least one team in your league has Derrick Henry. And so at least one team is going to be looking for running back help.
Yeah, I think he still had 27 carries in that game, which is absurd. So Derrick Henry just unreal toughness from him, but we do have to sort out how that Titans backfield will go. We want to take your questions no matter where you're watching, from YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Get those questions in. We'll take them live here on the air to help you get your waivers set for today. We also have streams tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday for this week. Tom Vecchio talking NBA DFS on Wednesdays. We have the Thursday Night Football preview with Brandon Gadula on Thursday at 4 p.m. And of course, the Snake Draft back once again Friday. We didn't have JJ last week. We had Ryan Williams fill in and he beat us. So obviously, Brandon and I do not deserve to be on the stream. Ryan
do I get a win for that?
Absolutely not. I will conclude that I was bad. I will not give a win up because those things are valuable. So let's go take the questions here from Steven. He's here to talk with the 2020 waiver wire with Adrian Peterson and Derrick Gore, not Frank, filling in here, although Derrick Gore was pretty old too back in 2012. I guess he would have been like 20, or I know 20 around the 2012 would be 9 years ago. He would have been 18. So, you know, there is that. Adrian Peterson, let's talk about this now, JJ. He is signed with the Titans. So is Deontay Foreman. Jeremy McNichols likely to be the passing game back for the Titans on this team. So how are you ranking McNichols relative to Peterson? What are your thoughts on those two guys in terms of the waiver wire for this week?
Yeah. You know, first off, no one is going to step in and be Derrick Henry. I think that the Titans are going to have to be a little bit more pass heavy than they've been. But Derrick Henry was averaging like 27, 28 rush attempts per game. And you usually see that kind of volume from sometimes three running backs, at least two running backs, you know, across teams. So we're at least going to see some sort of split backfield. Now, how is it going to be split up? You know, I would say if you assume, let's just run through a scenario. If you assume 23 rush attempts for your running backs a game for Tennessee, because they're still probably going to lean on the run because it's just the way that they operate their offense. You know, if you assume 23 running backs or so per game for their running backs, you know, I think Adrian Peterson can handle like 15 of those, and Jeremy McNichols sees like 8 of them, just to give you some context of where my head's at with that early down work. But the thing is, we know that Adrian Peterson is not a pass catching back. We know that he's never been a pass catching back. McNichols has already been utilized that way in this offense all season long. He's a 10.8% target share this year. So I think that McNichols is intriguing in PPR formats because not only is he going to maintain the role he already has, and don't forget, I mean, Derrick Henry has had the highest target share of his career up until this point. So Derrick Henry's been utilized out of the backfield too as a receiver, but Jeremy McNichols, I'd say would see a little bit of a bump from a target share perspective because of that. And then he's also going to see a bump on early down work as well. And so if you're in a PPR format, I think he gets the priority. If you're in more of a standard format, I think I would prefer Adrian Peterson in that kind of format just because he's going to see early down work. He's probably going to see goal line work too. So it's kind of a mess. I don't think one guy is going to step in and just be like the dude. I think both of them are sort of like flex plays moving forward, but I think that your format should determine, you know, which direction you go in.
Yeah, I think with McNichols, it's important to note too, like he's not incapable of handling early down work. Like he hasn't this year. Like he hasn't, looking at his rushing work, but he's like decently built. So he could do it. And I think that that's important to note with McNichols. It's within his range of outcomes to get early down work, potentially, maybe not taking with Peterson, but like, you know, that could happen at some point.
I also want to add that my prospect model in 2017, I think was the year, there were 2 running backs that went late in the draft that my model loved. One of them was Aaron Jones. He was a
Okay.
hit. So I'll
Yep.
pat myself on the back for that one. The other one, Jeremy McNichols. So let's hope that he can have some Aaron Jones magic in him.
The time has come. The time has come. Jeremy McNichols ascending right now. So check your league format, obviously, and use that to decide how you want to grade out those 2 guys on the wire. Sticking with the Titans here, Tanantha has Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott, and Trey Lance in 2 quarterback league. Would you package Ryan Tannehill and Brandon Cooks for Patrick Mahomes? Now, Tannehill, I view this as probably being a wash, honestly, for him with Derrick Henry being out, because he'll probably throw more, but I think there's a legit shot the efficiency goes down with the presence of Henry not being there. So I personally am kind of viewing it as being a wash for him with no Derrick Henry. Thoughts on Tannehill going forward, but also thoughts on this trade for Tanantha?
Yeah, so I mean, we already started seeing some of the regression hit within this Tennessee offense in terms of pass to rush touchdown ratio. To start the year, they had a really low ratio, meaning they were scoring a lot of their touchdowns on the ground versus through the air. And look, I know Derrick Henry's a beast. I know that that's just naturally going to happen when you have the sort of offense that they have. But if you look at recent history, if you look at the last 3 years with Mike Vrabel, I mean, it wasn't nearly as low as how they were sort of maintaining ththings over the first 5 or so weeks of the season. And then over the last couple of weeks, we've seen that sort of shift, including Derrick Henry throwing a touchdown pass. But we've seen that shift a little bit where that ratio is finally regressing a little bit. And I think that what this does is it sort of gives you a more sustainable way of scoring those touchdowns through the air with Derrick Henry not there. So, yeah, I would say it's more of a wash because the offense might not be as efficient without Henry. He's one of the few running backs that actually does matter. And so, as a result of that, Tannehill might see more volume. He might have a more sustainable rate of how they're scoring those touchdowns, and that's all good. But the offense just might be a little bit worse in general. So, yeah, I would say, with this scenario here, Ryan Tannehill, probably the same type of quarterback, low-end QB1, high-end QB2. Patrick Mahomes I'd still see him as like a mid-range QB1 at the very least. And so if Brandon Cooks is someone who, is like your wide receiver 4, you're not relying on him that much, I think this is a slam dunk. I would go with Patrick Mahomes here.
I would want that as well. Let's talk to Joseph over here. Would you add Devante Parker, who gets Houston this week, if you already have Jalen Waddle? And if Michael, we'll do this one first. We'll do that first. We'll talk about Michael Carter after that. So they've already got Waddle, but I think the good thing here is those guys had both double-digit targets last week. I know they're on the same team, but I feel like I would be okay with that if they're getting that much usage. Thoughts on Devante Parker right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's actually seen pretty decent usage when he's been healthy this year. And that Miami team, I think we might have talked about it last week, but that Miami team is one of the most pass-heavy teams in football right now, partially because of game script, but even in neutral script situations, they've been pretty pass-heavy. Part of that's also because they don't have any semblance of a running game whatsoever. I mean, they have no one that they can trust, and so they're just going to throw the ball. The other thing to keep in mind here, though, with Devante Parker and Jalen Waddle is that Will Fuller could eventually come back. And he's, he was eligible last week to come off of IR. He wasn't ready yet. But maybe it happens this week. I'm not totally sure. Is he sure? I would add him. That's fine. If you have Jalen Waddle, in situations like this, and you could even extend this to, if you're really, really good at wide receiver and you're not very good at running back, but there's a really hot wide receiver on the waiver wire. Should you add that player? Yeah, you want to just acquire value in fantasy football. And I think Devante Parker in like a 12-plus team league, he's a valuable piece to at least have on your roster, even if you have Jalen Waddle.
And I believe they said Fuller will not be back this week, which means that's at least a startable week for Devante Parker. Very startable week. And I'd take for week 9, I'll take that for sure. Second half of the question was, is Michael Carter the number one waiver ad if he's available this week? Ranking him relative to McNichols and Peterson specifically, I think is the best way to angle this here. Carter, big usage last week. Not the best team, but hey, 70% snap rate, a lot of work in the passing game. That's worth quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Michael Carter's favor for sure. Over the last 2 weeks, the running back target share for the Jets has been 40%. And that's not going to be sustained. I mean, up until that point through week 6, the running back target share was 18%. So, that's going to regress a little bit. But like you said, I mean, his workload's been good. And look, the Jets struggled opening the season, but they also faced some really tough defenses. They had Carolina, New England, and Denver. And in those 3 games, also Zach Wilson was getting his first starts in the NFL. Over those 3 games, they scored 2 touchdowns total on offense. Since then, in 4 games, they've scored 11. I mean, they're not so pathetic offensively that they're not going to be able to sustain any sort of production at the running back position. And now that Michael Carter is seeing such a big chunk of work in that offense and an offense that's been better, Yeah, I would use the number one waiver wire ad on him, I think, this week. If you're in a normal 12-team league, I think Michael Carter can be realistically in a PPR format, like a lower end RB2 rest of season.
And what we've seen with the Jets is they've gotten better as the offensive line has gotten more cohesive. Elijah Vera Tucker missed a lot of time during training camp. He's playing well at left guard. Mekhi Becton doesn't sound like he's going to come back within the next few weeks, but once he gets back to left tackle, that's a much better offensive line. And Zach Wilson should be healthy, so maybe the running back target share goes down, but the offense efficiency should stable out too. So I think that is a positive here for Michael Carter. Let's talk to Dan, 2 quarterback league. Trade Jalen Hurts and Chris Godwin for Justin Herbert and Mike Williams. Might be able to get Deebo Samuel instead.
Okay.
Take Deebo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Deebo and his 48% target share.
Yeah. We're at the point where Deebo's just he's it, right? This is what we're expecting from Deebo. Look, he's going to regress in some way because he's made some incredibly long plays that is not easy to sustain. But, Mike Williams is someone who over, 3 of his last 4 games, he's had under a 15% target share. I think that what we saw the first 3 weeks versus what we've seen the last 4 games for them, he's sort of in the middle. We shouldn't expect him to score 25 points per game like he was doing to start the season. But at the same time, I don't think what we've seen over the last few weeks, and they've had tough matchups too, but I don't think that we should expect what we've seen over the last few weeks. I don't think that's what we should expect from Mike Williams. But I would prefer Deebo over Mike Williams rest of season at this point. Yeah. You're in agreement there?
Oh, fully. Because it's just steadier targets. And I think that's valuable. I know that if Lance plays, that decreases passing volume. But when you have a 30% target share, you can take a hit in overall volume and still be pretty steady. I think that just the predictability from Deebo, the fact that they very clearly want the ball in his hands, I think that matters a lot for right now.
And let me say this about trades like this. Okay. This is just musical chairs, right? We're just shifting things around and no one's really there's going to be a winner and there will be a loser in a trade like this because you're trading same position for same position. So, I think it's fair. I don't really lean one way super, super heavily. I think I'd probably lean the Justin Herbert, Deebo Samuel side if you can get Deebo instead of Mike Williams. But really, at the end of the day, these kinds of trades are trades that I'm not looking to do in fantasy. Instead, I like trading wide receiver depth for running back if I need running backs. And I'm finding, the deficiencies that other teams need, and I'm trying to fill those with the things that I have.
Yeah, trades can be mutually beneficial. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. Mike is asking if there are any suggestions for replacing Derrick Henry. We've mentioned Michael Carter potentially being out there. Most leagues, probably not the case. We talked about McNichols and Peterson. Any other running backs, JJ, who you think are worth mentioning in terms of waivers for this week?
Yeah, Carlos Hyde is someone that you could at least, add for this week. Sounds like James Robinson might miss this week. He's day-to-day / week-to-week. It's not a great matchup that they have against Buffalo, but it's still something. They have a bye this week. Washington does, but I think Jared Patterson should be on your radar just because, Antonio Gibson not on the injury report all week or for the first time in weeks. And he sees his lowest running back rush share of the season. It's just, what can we do about that? Just... This is the way that it goes.
He practiced Wednesday for the first time in a month. And then no, just kidding. Jared Patterson's getting 6 first half carries compared to 5 for Gibson.
And look, my main thought with that is that they knew the bye week was coming and they're just kind of resting him and getting prepared for that. But it's still something that you have to monitor. And there's a couple reasons why. Not only is Antonio Gibson already banged up and he has his shin issues that he's been dealing with, but on top of that, what if Washington just sucks and then continues to suck, right? What if Washington's only a 3-win team this year and they keep losing? Why would they throw their superstar running back and sacrifice his future, for meaningless games? So I think Jared Patterson down the stretch could end up being, he saw 50% of the team's running back rushes this past week. He's not going to be an every down back because JD McKissick is there. And I would prefer McKissick over Jared Patterson, but McKissick's just rostered in more leagues. But he's another guy that sort of popped in my head, someone that you could at least add off the wire. But, if you have Derrick Henry, I think the obvious way to go is to look at Jeremy McNichols and Adrian Peterson.
And the Washington being bad thought is pertinent because not only are they struggling, they're in the same division as Dallas, who is just obliterating people, even with backup quarterbacks. And the NFC wildcard race is not going to be fun for a team with 5 or, whatever losses they've already got. So that's a rough situation. Let's talk to Milo. I'm looking to trade Eli Mitchell for a wide receiver or Darren Waller, possibly. They have Higbee and Knox. Who do you target out of Thielen, Woods, Deontay, Moore, Sutton, or Pittman? I mean, obviously, it's a situation where it depends on what they're willing to give you. So I would talk to your league mate and see who they are willing to part with there. But I mean, like, I would think that's more dependent on them than anything for right now. Let's talk to Rob here. Should I trade Pittman and Damian Harris for Christian McCaffrey? We are recording. We're talking on Tuesday. Don't really know the status of McCaffrey yet. Sounds like he'll practice Wednesday. That does not mean he'll be activated, as we saw previously. So would you trade Michael Pittman and that rock solid target share, Damian Harris for that good early down rule for Christian McCaffrey right now?
Let's do it. Sure. Yeah. Let's just go with the upside. I mean, this is the way I play fantasy. Some people are a little bit more risk averse, but I think you got to just kind of go for it. And look, I love Michael Pittman. I was very, very into him entering the season. I wasn't as high on Damian Harris as I should have been. But Damian Harris has sort of a volatile role in that offense. Just that New England's been playing fairly well, and they've kept games close and had a neutral game script. But if that game script goes south, same deal with like Elijah Mitchell. When that game script goes south, it's really, it could be a bad week for that running back, a pretty bad week, because they're not the pass catching backs in their backfield. So, Damian Harris is still a solid RB2, don't get me wrong, but he's not, without that receiving work, it's impossible for him to really be a consistent RB1. Michael Pittman, I love him, but he's probably still a wide receiver 2 more than anything else. Christian McCaffrey can be a league winner. So yeah, go with Christian McCaffrey.
I would agree with that as well. Let's talk to Jack here. How much would you put on Calvin Ridley? Calvin Ridley stepping away from football for right now to focus on his mental health, which obviously is a lot more important than fantasy football. So good for Calvin Ridley being self-aware and acknowledging when he needs to try to find some help and stuff like that. In fantasy leagues, JJ, where Calvin Ridley may have been dropped, are you seeking him out? How are you handling that situation?
I mean, look, your guess, Jack, is as good as mine. We don't know how long he'll be out for. So it depends on how much FOB you have and how people are spending in your league. I would guess that something fair would be like 30-ish% maybe, just to see if he does come back sooner rather than later. But I would be lying if I sat here and gave you a firm answer as if I know, because it's just impossible to know when Calvin Ridley will or if he does come back.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. It depends on where you're at. If you have a bench spot to burn and have time before you need a starter, a lot of us don't at this time of year. Yeah. So I think that the way those things for sure. Update from last Friday, Darnell, we were talking about tabs because Brandon had like 47 tabs open on Friday. Darnell said he had 27 open. Darnell's down to 19. Darnell, I'm proud of you. This is progress. I have
three.
I have 2. Darnell, if we can cut down to 3 browsers, I'm hoping they're not different browsers because that's psychotic. If we can cut back on the browsers, we can talk, but I'm proud of you. This is progress. You should be proud of yourself, Darnell.
And we're saying browsers, we're saying like Windows for browsers, right? Not like...
That's my hope. I hope he doesn't have like Safari, like Firefox.
Yeah,
like Darnell would be...
Right.
Are you a big Firefox guy, Darnell? I don't know. We'll figure that out. Anyway, is Firefox still a thing? I'm not sure. Anyway.
I think so, yeah.
Philip, he is in a standard non-PPR league. Would you trade Kyler Murray for Dalvin Cook? So this is different, JJ, when we were talking about before, where it was... the same position. This is a quarterback for a featured running back. You doing this one?
Yeah, you do these kind of trades all day. I know that Kyler Murray can give you an edge in fantasy, and he will. I mean, when he's healthy. But Kyler Murray's not healthy right now. Last season too, we saw him with that injury, and that he suffered in like week 10 or whatever. Maybe it was even earlier than that. And he was not the same quarterback from then on out. And so you don't know how this injury might affect him for the rest of the season. But not only that, I mean, even if he were completely healthy, I would take Dalvin Cook over Kyler Murray.
Dalvin Cook's got really good usage. I would seek that out for sure. And the Vikings playing chaotic, fun games, and that's always good for running backs to get targets late in games, so we'll take it. Let's talk to Joe. Would you trade Adam Thielen and Zach Ertz for T. Higgins and Zach Moss? Moss is getting a lot of red zone work for the Bills to score a lot of points. Higgins getting a lot of work overall, not converting a whole lot just yet. But what are your thoughts on this one?
I think that this is probably a need-based sort of trade where one team is getting a tight end that they need, one team is getting a running back that they need. And Moss, the next couple of games, the next few games, Moss should be in good shape because, the schedule looks really good for Buffalo. The other thing too is Zach Moss is seeing a lot of work as a receiver. He has 15 targets over his last 3. His target share per game is like 12-13%. And they're utilizing him in neutral and negative game scripts a lot more than I think either of us probably expected entering the season. So I really like Zach Moss. If Moss had scored even 1 touchdown over the last 2 weeks, we'd probably be viewing him completely differently than we're viewing him right now because he's getting decent enough work. He's seeing yardage. So yeah, I mean, I like Moss. I think that it's a fair trade overall. So if you need the running back, if you need that help, like if you're giving Thielen and Ertz away, I think that's fine. If you need the tight end help, I think that's fine too, because I would prefer Adam Thielen over T Higgins rest of season. There is a slight downgrade from that player to the other, but I do think that Zach Moss is a very viable option if you're in desperate need at running back.
I think the key for Moss is getting the kind of work that you want. You want passing game work and you want goal line work, and he can get both those. Like Josh Allen's still going to take away some goal line rushes, but Zach Moss is, I think, like a 75% snap rate inside the red zone the past 5 games. That's quite a bit.
Well, and the other thing too that we always can't forget with committees is that there is upside if something happens to the other running back in that committee. So there's still some upside there with Zach Moss too if something happens to Devin Singletary.
And he's been separated to begin with. So there is room no matter what. Let's talk to Flo over on YouTube. Will Taysom Hill become a low-end quarterback one the rest of the way? Taysom Hill still has not yet cleared concussion protocol for the Saints, but seems like there is a decent chance he plays this week. He would obviously be the starter over Trevor Siemian if he's good to go. How are you viewing Taysom Hill under the assumption he is the starter the rest of the way?
Yeah, I think a low-end QB1 is fair. Last year, he started 4 games. In those 4 games, he scored no fewer than 17.5 fantasy points. He was QB 13 or better in all 4 of those games. He rushed for 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's what we're getting with Taysom Hill. We know there's here's the other thing too with like the pass catchers there, just to throw this out there. The Saints had so few targets going around that offense to begin with. I don't think there's going to be that massive of like this downgrade for some of their players because there wasn't that much volume going around there anyway through the air. So I'm not as concerned as some others might be. Maybe a little bit of a downgrade for Alvin Kamara, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be like so totally massive. Just because there wasn't that much volume going around anyway in that receiving game. But yeah, I mean, I think Taysom Hill is definitely worth an ad this week if you need a quarterback. I would expect him to use his legs a lot. And sort of be, I mean, honestly, I think Taysom Hill could be like a Jalen Hurts type player. Yeah. The difference is that, Jalen Hurts, let's throw this out there too. Jalen Hurts, how he's been performing up until this past week wasn't totally sustainable because he was getting so many rushing touchdowns, right? Like we can't expect that, but we can expect some sort of floor from a guy like Hurts, from a guy like Taysom Hill because of what they do with their legs. And I think that comp in terms of how they score points and sort of the offensive situation that they're in, I think it makes a lot of sense. So Taysom Hill, you're sort of getting like a Jalen Hurts type quarterback.
Yeah, going back to what you said about how it's not actually a change. Like if you look back at the starts that Taysom Hill made last year, excluding the Denver game, which Kendall Hinton started. Yeah. If you exclude that game, their early down first half pass rate was 50%. Their early down first half pass rate this year with Jameis is 49.2%. It's the exact same. So there's no change. They were running the Taysom Hill offense with Jameis at quarterback, which is wild. Sticking with Taysom Hill, Raymond is asking if we can rank these 3 quarterbacks in Superflex leagues. Tua Tagovailoa will start for the rest of the year for the Dolphins, Taysom Hill for the Saints, Justin Fields showing some life for the Bears. All 3 are viable options for Superflex. So how would you rank those 3 guys the rest of the way?
I'd probably go assuming Taysom starts the rest of the season, we have to make some sort of assumption there. I'm going to go Taysom to Justin Fields. I say that, of course Fields has a ceiling. We saw that this past week and I'm excited about it because I touted Fields, before the season started. But I think we have to be realistic that, it's a one game sample. Hopefully he proves me wrong and he sustains that, but I'm just not super, super confident in it. And Tua's not been bad, guys. I mean, since he's come back from his injury, he's had 2+ matchups and 1 tough matchup against Buffalo. Played Atlanta and Jacksonville, scored 26 and 21 fantasy points, and then he scored like 15, 16 against Buffalo. There's nothing wrong with that, and he's getting it done with his legs a little bit too. And like we talked about, they are a fairly pass-heavy offense. I don't mind Tua at all as a QB2 moving forward, but I think that Taysom Hill has just more upside, so I'd go with him as the one in this ranking.
And the Dolphins' schedule is really good. 4 of their next 6 games are at home. They face the Texans this week. Then the Ravens, that's a tough one. But then the Jets, the Panthers, kind of tough. And then the Giants and the Jets again. Like that is 4 easy matchups, 4 games at home. You're going to take that all day. So I think that bodes. And Will Fuller may be back too. So that sounds good to me. DJ, you tried to hang me out to dry yesterday too, but Ryan was very kind to me because he was hosting and didn't bring this one up. I will, DJ. I was actually talking on Slack about this. I don't know if it was with you, JJ, but like
I
mentioned,
I didn't know. I would have told you, DJ, that the Jets were going to beat the Bengals, but I wasn't there on Friday.
Correct. So DJ, I was talking about this too. I felt bad about it. I didn't predict the Jets would beat the Bengals. Picking a 10.5 point favorite over a 3.5 point favorite, generally good process. I agree though. Bad pick by me. But also Jets. Let's talk to Francis, best tight end streamer in case Kittle can't go this week. Options include Cole Kmet, David Njoku, Austin Hooper, CJ Uzama. Thinking about Uzama because they have Burrow at quarterback. What do you think with this tight end set here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like super into any of them that much. I think Cole Kmet is, I guess, kind of intriguing because you see, I'm looking at a list really quick for my other show where we give streaming tight end recommendations. I don't think any of these guys are on the list this week. If Evan Ingram's available, he's a good option. If Dan Arnold is still out there in 95% of Yahoo leagues. So if he's out there, I think he's a good option because he's seeing a lot of volume in that offense. An offense that's going through him and Jamal Agnew. Tyler Conklin, I like a lot against Baltimore. He was utilized a lot this past week, and Justin Jefferson's a little bit banged up. And then Pat Freiermuth, if he's out there, I love me some Pat Freiermuth.
And he's out there in 12-team leagues right now.
Yeah. So, Freiermuth, who knows what happens with Eric Ebron, but even before Eric Ebron's injury, the last time we saw both these guys active, Freiermuth had an 18% target share. And a lot of that, I mean, it coincides directly with Juju Smith-Schuster being out for the year. So I think Freiermuth is a very, very interesting option as well. And then super deep play, Tommy Sweeney against Jacksonville. Only saying that because he ran a lot of routes. He's not Dawson Knox, but he did run a lot of routes. He basically played the Dawson Knox role, so you could always throw him in your lineup and see if they score a touchdown.
If you're going to bet on a touchdown, bet on the Bills to score a touchdown.
Exactly.
So I would do that as well. Let's talk to Muller SJ. Are you worried about Kyle Pitts with Calvin Ridley out for the foreseeable future? They were offered, I assume is that Taysom or Tyreek? Hill and Knox for Mitchell, Pittman, and Pitts in non-PPR. It would make them tight at running back this week, Gibson out. Would you do that trade? And overall thoughts on Kyle Pitts?
Okay. I mean, the trade is kind of tough to say in a vacuum. It depends on like the size of the league and what your roster looks like because you're giving up 3 startable assets. I think if it helps you, I think Elijah Mitchell's an RB2 from here on out. I think Michael Pittman's a wide receiver 2, and I think Kyle Pitts is still a top 5 tight end from here on out. Tyreek Hill though could be a wide receiver, the second best wide receiver in fantasy, so I totally get that. And Dawson Knox, low end tight end 1, so hopefully that sort of helps. In terms of how I view Kyle Pitts without Calvin Ridley, I think a lot of times people overstate like the double coverage thing, and I know that there were reports about how like Carolina covered Kyle Pitts and how they took him out of the game and all that kind of stuff. I get it to some degree, but at the same time, good players end up finding the ball and getting the ball a lot. And when there's other good players out of that lineup or out of a lineup, the other good players are going to end up, I feel like I'm talking to a 3-year-old, but the other good players end up seeing more volume. It's just sort of how target shares work themselves out. And we don't know if Calvin Ridley is going to be back or not this year. I mean, we have no idea how that's going to look. So I still think that Kyle Pitts is a top 5 tight end. I'm not really shifting my view on Pitts all that much. He might be less efficient, but at the same, the Falcons might be less efficient, but I think he's going to still sustain a pretty high target share.
Yeah. We also should remember that Calvin Ridley missed the London game where Kyle Pitts had like 168 or 119, whatever it was, yards. So he's been fine in half the games. Let's talk to George here. How are you guys approaching the Titans backfield with Deontay Foreman signing in Dynasty? So looking more from a Dynasty perspective, are you adding Deontay Foreman this week or thinking there's not enough there? I personally would add anything with a pulse in Dynasty. So I'm on board, but what are your thoughts on Deontay Foreman there?
Yeah, I mean, sure, you can add him. I mean, it's hard to say, don't add this guy in a dynasty league because, you're going to be dropping someone like Josh Gordon or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Deontay Foreman is going to take on a big role, if that's helpful. I mean, anything's possible, but I'm still banking on Peterson and Jeremy McNichols to see that backfield share. And there's other running backs in that roster who could step in as well. Darrington Evans is on IR, but, there are other running backs there as well. I'm not, Foreman's had opportunities on multiple places. I didn't mind him that much as a prospect, but he was a very, he was a very one-dimensional back. And he's not someone, if anything, he would take away from Peterson, not really McNichols, but I just don't see that really happening considering the Titans' first move was to get Adrian Peterson, and they're sort of speaking through their actions. And so I think Peterson's going to be the early down guy.
And it would require some serious things to break in Deontay Foreman's favor for him to be a legit startable fantasy asset. That's fine in Dynasty, but for redraft, it's okay to ignore him for now. Darnell asking for thoughts on Chuba Hubbard and Darryl Williams. Chuba depends on McCaffrey. So we'll hold off on that one. But Darryl Williams did lose some work to Derrick Gore last night for the Chiefs. Still got like 6 targets. He still got enough early down work and still kind of came through and had good yardage. So what's your outlook for Darryl Williams right now?
Yeah, I mean, but CEH could be back this week too. So it's a similar situation as Chuba. The difference is that Chuba, I mean, I would prefer Chuba over Darryl Williams at this point because we've had one running back injury linger with Christian McCaffrey, but on top of that, Chuba's just seen a better workhorse workload without his top running back in the lineup. So I would prefer Chuba to Darryl Williams if that helps.
Yeah, I would agree there. Okay, GrimFan has updated that Firefox is still a thing. Good to know. I had no idea this is the case. Anyway, they have Kelce on their team, and a little worried. I don't blame them. So if you have Kelce, what are you doing right now?
I mean, if you can sell him on name brand, I think that's fine. I'm not really like worried. I'm going to talk about him on my show that drops tomorrow, but I'm not like overly worried about Kelce. He's still seeing a fairly strong enough target share. He's still the tight end 1 in fantasy. I mean, like, it's just that he's not the same guy as last year or previous years. He's not giving you that same kind of edge. So it depends what you would get for him. I don't think that there's someone out there that's buying Travis Kelce thinking that he's going to be what he was last year. I think that we're past that point. If you can get a running back 1 for Travis Kelce right now, like if you can get Jonathan Taylor for Travis Kelce or something like that, then yeah, do that all day long. I mean, you're getting a top 5 running back for a guy, even like Aaron Jones, I think would be fine for a guy like Kelce, even though he's not, seeing the same kind of work that a Jonathan Taylor is. A guy like Aaron Jones is fine for Travis Kelce. But I wouldn't be like trading Travis Kelce for like Elijah Mitchell or anything like that. I think that Kelce is still the tight end 1. I'd still treat him as the tight end 1. I think he's gonna be fine.
And I think that the compensation part is the key here because he just came up short in an island game where the Chiefs offense didn't look good. Everyone knows right now that things are not great for Travis Kelce. That's going to impact things quite a bit. Not a question here, but an update from Darnell. 3 Chrome browsers. Darnell, I'm proud of you for that. Cut back on the tabs and we can talk, but I'm proud of you. You're making progress. Good work. That is all that we have here for today on the Waiver Wire Q&A. But as mentioned, we have streams coming up the next 3 days. Tom Vecchio with NBA DFS tomorrow. Brandon Gadula with the Thursday football preview on Thursday. And the snake draft coming back your way on Friday. JJ, people check out the Late Round Podcast where they get podcasts. Find you on Twitter at Late Round QB. Good luck to you with waivers tonight. We'll talk to you once again on Friday for the snake draft.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
All right, I am on Twitter as well at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Big thank you to Joy Affleck, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Joy, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with waivers. We'll talk to you once again later on this week. This has been the Waiver Wire Q&A.